So thanks everyone for joining us. I'm Beth Kuchar, chairperson of Innovate Pasadena, and I'm really excited today because we're here to talk about startup basics. And joining us in the hot seat today is Erin Beck. Erin is a fellow board member of Innovate Pasadena, and she's the CEO and founder of Wana, an online marketplace for family-to-family babysitting exchange. And she's here today to answer everybody's questions on launching your startup. So anything from basic mistakes founders can make to successfully navigating those early startup obstacles. Thank you, Erin, for joining us. And I think you're on mute, Erin.
There it goes. Thank you so much, Beth and Kion, for setting this up. Innovate Pasadena and community. It is awesome to be back here with you guys again. My name is Erin Beck. I'm the founder and CEO of Wana Family Network. And before we get started, I want everyone to jump into your chat. What I want to know before we get started is, what are your assumptions about what is required for a successful startup? So what are the things that you've been taught are the golden rules for succeeding as a startup entrepreneur? I'm going to give you guys just a few seconds to throw some things into the chat. All right,
and it looks like we have a few people late in joining us. Maybe you could repeat the question so they can jump in.
Awesome. Okay, so to get started, for everyone who just came in, I want to give you a minute to pull your chat up. Put into the chat, what are some of the fundamental assumptions that you feel are what makes a startup successful? What are the golden rules that you have been taught are required for a successful startup? And kind of think about this for the next few minutes as we talk through intros and I kind of get us started. And if you come up with something as we go, please put that into the chat because that's going to be some of what fuels our discussion today. Okay, so we'll chat through some slides all through which we will have discussion. So be ready for that. And it'll take about 10 minutes for that and then 20 minutes for Q&A. We've already got some questions prepared, so looking forward to getting you guys those answers. Okay, so Wana Family Network. Wana Family Network is a public benefit corporation that is committed to increasing access to affordable child care through robust and enriching community networks. What does that mean? Great big babysitting co-op. We set up an online platform where families can trade care with one another for time instead of dollars, which enables actually for real, truly free babysitting. And then if you don't have time to sit back, you can purchase the credits to get more babysitting hours at way, way, way below market rate. So it doesn't matter if you're coming in and you have all the time in the world to give or none at all, you are still getting either free or reduced rate care. That was what I was out there to do, was to get affordable childcare accessible to every family. Why? Because as a new parent back in 2016 with no full-time job, because I wanted to be a full-time stay-at-home mom, that is what we needed as a family. The job that I was leaving at that time was from SpaceX. I was a SpaceX Dragon mission director, which are the people with the headsets like Gene Kranz and Apollo 13 that push the buttons and send the spacecraft to ISS. My kind of signature work that I did while I was there, what my big focus was automation of mission operations. So within the last 2 years that I was there, I was able to reduce out 85% of all labor hours. So my jam when it comes to whether it's startups or engineering systems or whatever is to strip that system down to its absolute bare essentials. So you can find out what the fundamental requirements are. When you get to the fundamental requirements is when you get the greatest flexibility for actually achieving the mission that you're setting out to do. And when it is a startup, what is the fundamental base requirement for a startup? To survive. So I want to pull us back to November of 2018, which is the last time that I spoke in Pasadena at Friday Coffee Meetup. Sorry, I'm not sure why it's advancing, but we'll try to get it to go back to where it belongs. There There we go. Okay.
So development took like 8 months longer than we thought it would, and we still have a long way to go. And in that time, our closest competitor went from a half-functional app to over 10,000 users. Cool. I felt like I got punched in the gut. I just sat and stared at that number and thought, what do we do now? And what did I do wrong? So let's think back on that a little bit. The only thing I could have done wrong was to not start. I started, so I'm ahead. People are going to start with you. They're going to be faster than you. They're going to be better than you. But in the end, if you were the only one that stuck it out, you're the only one left. And do you know what happened last month? For unfortunate problems of their own, that same competitor pivoted almost entirely out of our space. And then at the same time, this other competitor came in exactly into our space. So whether you think you're in the clear or you think you're surrounded, you are wrong. You are trapped or propelled only by your own persistence. And what is the worst that can happen? So instead of first to market leader, we come in as a plucky copycat competitor. Let them fear us. Or maybe they utterly dominate us and provide a nice exit opportunity after a battle well fought. Or we get just enough users that I finally get a paycheck and I can cover rent and preschool. Or nobody joins except me and my friends, and we get, wait for it, free babysitting, which is what we started for in the first place. And I get one great tool to help me be the best parent that I can be.
So why go back to 2018? Because the punchline to this story is 6 months after this conversation at Friday Coffee Meetup, that competitor sent me this email. Some changes to our business. We are sad to tell you that the Kome Babysitting Exchange will no longer be available. They were shutting down. Our biggest competitor, the ones who had trailblazed cooperative childcare throughout the United States and were the unquestioned market leader, closing their doors. So we reached out, and Kome became Kome powered by Wana. And over the rest of 2019, we consolidated all of our direct competitors under Wana Family Network, becoming not just the domestic market leader, but also the international market leader with a moat of over 400% in terms of user growth and traction. We brought in over $200,000 in investment that year. And we hosted over 20,000 users who swapped tens of thousands of hours of free and affordable childcare. And then in 2020, we saw all of those numbers for usage and traction drop down by 90% as we asked families to stop trading care so they could honor their local lockdown orders. However, the need for essential workers to accept care was even higher. So over 2020, despite all of the fear that that might be the end of many childcare businesses, we were able to monetize successfully on 3 channels. The biggest one of those being in corporate clients, where we now provide cooperative care resources to employers representing over 500,000 employees across the United States. We defined this category of cooperative care, and now are really the only major player in that. But here is the other punchline to that story. At the time where we acquired Kome, we were months away from closing up shop ourselves. Months, literal months. If they had held on just a little longer, or if we had shut down just a little earlier, this would be a very, very different story. So what is the fundamental rule and requirement for a startup? To survive. Okay. So here's another thing for you guys to put into the chat right now. Okay. As we go, I'm going to run through a few of the lean, mean, gritty startup strategies for survival that I have learned. I would like you to put into the chat as we go along the same ones that you have learned, right? So let's have this be something that is a collaborative share. And also, when I say things that are counter to what you've learned, I want you to challenge them, because I went out and learned a lot of rules about startups and then spent a lot of time breaking them, did it on purpose. So I'm interested in having a discussion with you about how you feel about the rules that you've learned and which ones you choose to break. So as long as you are making continuous forward progress in your startup, you will eventually get there. Okay, so it's not a question of if your startup can be successful. The question is, how long are you willing to keep working at it? And can you survive long enough to get to that finish line? It's not a matter of if, it is a matter of how long and when. Okay, so almost everything you can do with money, you can do without money, but it's going to take longer. So your finite resource is not actually money. Your finite resource is time. And that's what really makes the difference between whether your startup's going to make it or not. It's not your funding, it's not your market, it's not your product. It's how long are you willing to keep doing this? Okay, so what are your fixed costs? And this is the first thing that we look at. What are the fixed costs? Your taxes, your insurance, and your hosting and services. What are your flexible costs? Your labor, your marketing, and I would argue your legal, how much you invest into your legal costs. When times are lean, you can change your flexible costs, but you cannot change your fixed costs. So when we think about fixed cost, you don't have them. is what we try to work towards. So for example, it's not about how great a tool would be. It's not about its value. It's about just the survival. So I get from my team, well, not anymore, because now we have a mantra around this, but it used to be, oh, there's this great tool. We could post to every social channel at the same time and it would save us so much. It would save us so much time. Time is not the finite resource. The finite resource, time is something that we had a lot of, money was not. Okay, so therefore, yeah, it adds a lot of value, but it doesn't get the job done. So don't commit to a tool like that. G Suite, really great tool. Everyone needs email, but they don't actually. And every account that you have costs you $5 a month. So the only people in our company that have an email account are those who email from it every day. Everybody else just has a Google group assigned to their name. So if somebody happens to email them at a company account, it will get to them and then they reply from their personal email. We use this for our engineers. We use it for our consultants, anyone who's not sending email on a regular basis, and it saves us like $50 to $100 a month. So that's a big one. Everything should be on credits. If it's not on credits, you got to kill it. So we designed the engineering platform, or are designing to be host platform agnostic. We started on Amazon Web Services. We are now on Azure. We're prepping a move to Google Cloud Platform because that happens to be where I have earned free credits. And I don't have $1,200 a month to pay on hosting fees right now. So the more flexible you can be by not committing to certain tools, use those credits. And be careful about what you integrate into your technology. One of the biggest mistakes that I have made recently, and I made it last year, is I committed us to an email, like an emailer that was a little pricey, and now it's integrated into the product and we can no longer afford it. But I have to keep paying for it until I can get it out of my product. So yeah, that map widget might be super cool, or, oh, it's so great if you can send this type of text message because it's like rich formatted. And no. If it's going to cost you money, don't do it, because it's a fixed cost that will kill your company at the point where times are lean. So find other ways to make that work. Okay, bound yourself by the growth that matters. Okay, one of the things that we have, and get there in a way that's super lean. One of the things that we've always wanted is for people to be able to cash in the points that they earn babysitting for cool stuff and to buy new points through the app. Oh, that would be so great, be so cool. But one of the most expensive things that we do is spend engineering time. And I can achieve all that marketplace sort of stuff through the website with Google Forms and Excel spreadsheets. And I always hate that this is the way it ends up. It always ends up being if the marketing and business development team calls and says, hey, could the engineering team do this? The answer is almost always no. It would definitely make everyone's life easier, but if you can do it manually using free tools off the internet, do that. I actually learned that from Ani from Dish Divvy. If you ever get a chance to talk with her, she's a real smart one on using free tools to create a great big product. And eventually it will turn out that we can build all of those things in, but you're not going to have time to build everything. So what you choose to build first is extremely important. You have to be ruthlessly choosy about that. One of the other things that we chose to do is, so user growth is important. You can buy a lot of users, but it doesn't mean they're going to be great users. And if your product's not driving organic people into your platform, it means that something's not right with your product. So you can spend a lot of money on marketing, doesn't fix your product. So we don't spend any money on user acquisition. If the product's not bringing it in organically through word of mouth and referral, then something's not working. We need to put the money into engineering instead. However, when we were pitching to investors, they did want to know what our cost per acquisition was. So that's totally cool. So I turned on our marketing for 2 months. I got cost per acquisition dollars and I turned it off. I got the number, turned it off. So it was a cheap way to get something that was important for future budgeting, but then we didn't commit additional resources into it. Another one that comes up a lot is you want to spend a lot of time you do want to get the word out. You could be on lots of different social media channels. But what is the one that actually matters to your growth? Well, right now we're building our social media into a revenue stream. The thing that matters for us is everything we publish should make money, should sustain the company in some way. Now, when I look at someone's like, oh, you got to be on Clubhouse. I'm like, can I monetize Clubhouse right now? No, I cannot. Can I monetize Instagram? Yes, I can. So we're doing Instagram. We're not going to do Clubhouse right now. Still a really cool platform. I still really want to do it. It's just like not going to be today. And so what do we need on Instagram? We have to have this engagement rate for somebody to be able to post an ad through us and have that be successful. Doesn't have to be more than that, but needs to not be less than that. So then we put the effort into getting exactly that engagement, exactly those number of followers, no more, no less. So it's not an amorphous, let's do social, let's do marketing. They're defined targets to meet a specific goal, which is everything. In this case, everything needs to make money. So if you can bound what that growth element is that you need to focus on, and then you don't worry about all the rest of it, helps to simplify your decision-making process. The most important investment you're going to make is in your team. So we talked about your fixed costs and your flexible costs. We pretty much got rid of all the fixed costs and got rid of most of the flexible costs. The last flexible cost that you absolutely can't get around is your team. But you're going to go through lean times and you're going to go through rich times. What do you do to build a team that can last and sustain through that? The most important thing that we do is we hire our team part-time. That allows everybody on our team to pick up another job or 2 or 3. And we actively work with our team members to get them those jobs. Our marketing director actually has 3 other clients that were direct references from us in effort in helping to make sure that everyone on the team is stable. So if there's a time where it's super lean on our side, we know that everyone is still taken care of. The extra benefit is that they're bringing in extra skills and knowledge that they're continuing to learn by working out in other industries and with other groups. We also job share internally. So people need to be able to take time for family. They need to take time for themselves. They need to take time for other work if they need to. In order for us to do that fluidly, it means that someone has to be able to cover for someone else at all times, even me. So I share everything that I'm doing. Everyone shares everything that they're doing. We over communicate. We have a group email address that we BCC into work emails so that everyone is in the loop on all the conversations that are happening. So anyone can pick up where somebody else left off and get moving. The rule is commit to what you can do and get it done. But you don't have to be the one that gets it done as long as it gets done. Have somebody else who gets it in at the exact same time. That's a team atmosphere that allows us to support each other to being maximally flexible for as long as possible so that we don't have people burning out after 3 months, a year, and we can keep a long-standing and committed team. We also invest a lot into our interns. We've hosted over 20 interns from Cal State Dominguez Hills in California, from Flash Starts in Ohio, from Fellows in Colorado. all of which were free to us because they were receiving academic credit. You can work with universities to establish these internship programs. I highly recommend you do and reach out to me if you've got any questions. But by mixing a fantastic, enthusiastic junior staff with a senior staff, or even a mid-level staff and senior advisors, you can maximize the amount of productivity you get and minimize the amount of dollars investment that you're putting in. And putting the senior advisors into our team, many of whom are residents of the Pasadena area. So people you'll know: Rob McClinton, Jean Chuang, Brian Dixon, Ashley Lewis, Maria Hoey. A really fantastic group of folks from right here locally that we depend on for that expert knowledge. And then we can hire junior and mid-level and get really far with that. And we train them to be managers and self-sufficient themselves. I got a big shout out to Rob McClinton for being the leader on that and making sure that everyone learns how to be self-sufficient on their own and be leaders. Again, so that we can all cover for one another and get the most out of what we're trying to do. So here's us. One last thing to end on that I've said a lot of times. And so forgive me if you're hearing it again, but I'm always interested in hearing people's thoughts on this. They say that only 1 in 10 startups are going to succeed. They say that only 1 in 100 will ever get institutional funding. Well, to me, that means that 9 out of 10 startups that do succeed never get that institutional funding. So why is it that so many of us are taught that getting that big VC check is the thing that is the key to our survival as a startup and the ultimate end milestone before we start heading towards success? We have become, as Wana Family Network and now the Kome Cooperative Childcare Marketplace, the global category-defining market leader in cooperative childcare. We have succeeded in our mission in bringing affordable childcare to tens of thousands of families. And we did that one $10,000 angel check and one small client at a time. You can too. So what I want us all to think about today is, what are the things that we've learned that we think have to be true about startups? What are those rules? How can we break them in a deliberate, mindful, and ethical way to survive? Because the longer you can survive, the more you guarantee the success of your company. So I want to turn that over now to Beth and Kion for Q&A. And please continue to use the chat, throw in there some things like, what are you working on at your startup right now that makes it hard? What are the things you're like, oh my gosh, if it wasn't like this, it would be so much easier. And let's talk about that and what we can do to get down to base requirements and make it easier.
Great. And we did have several questions that some of our folks today asked you ahead of time, Erin, and we have some live attendee questions as well. I think I see a lot of things regarding cost and budget, and that's a big concern for startups. But our first question that someone asked is up on the screen for you here.
Okay, how much did you budget for your startup cost, and did you ever use a credit card for it? And I'll extend that to, did you ever take a loan for it? I would be interested for people to throw into the chat what they think. What do you think a startup should cost every year? Say you have a team of you and 2 other people and you're running like a software tech company. What do you think an annual should be? I didn't budget. I had a small pot of money that I could use, and I used it. And over the first year, I spent about $40,000, 40 to 50. And I came to the end of that year with no team left, a product that did not work, that had been delivered unfinished, no users except for my family and friends, like basically nothing. I spent $50,000 in a year and I had absolutely nothing at the end to show for it. I did have one great advisor, Jean Chuang. He came on like right at the end of this period and kind of helped me get through though. Oh my God, what did we just do? I then spent the next year with, I don't know, maybe $500 or $1,000 in the bank account, something like that, and had the most successful year that we had up to that point. When we got to the point where, because I thought, I'll take this money, I'll like hire an outside dev shop, I will hire an expensive attorney to file my LLC paperwork. You can file your own LLC paperwork for like $100 and one legal Zoom tutorial in an afternoon. Hey, Rob's here. But I spent like $1,000 because I had it. And so I spent it. I spent it on logo design and at the end, I hadn't built my own team. I hadn't spent the time on deep market research. And so at the end of that year, I backtracked and brought on a whole bunch of interns, did a whole bunch of market research. I found folks who would work on a cash equity split for working on the technology. I knew it would take a very, very, very long time, but I also knew that they were good and talented people, that at the end, we would have not just a product, but a team. And over that year, we're able to get ourselves into the position where we were ready to start raising money, doing acquisitions, and actually supporting clients. So I did my best work when we were totally broke. I do not put anything on loan or credit, and I do not offer any kind of back pay. Everything is forward looking. And the reason for that is there's two reasons. If we never made enough money to pay anybody back, then I would have all of this debt that I would have to pay out of my own pocket. Well, if you're going to pay it out of your own pocket someday, then pay it out of your own pocket today. Don't put yourself in personal debt. And the other reason is no investor wants to come in and give you a bunch of money that back pays a whole bunch of other loans and things that you had made before. They want to see forward progress. So I wasn't going to put us in a position that would preclude us from getting future funding because I had put us into debt. So that's my hard rule. I know that a lot of people have a lot of success in taking out loans. If I were making consistent revenue, then we would do that. But that's not the case. What do we got, Beth?
Okay, I'm going to toggle between some pre-asked questions and we've got some live questions going here. And Jennifer asks, how do you balance being cost conscious with spending enough so you don't miss the opportunity?
Can you say that one more time?
So how do you balance being cost conscious with spending enough money so you don't miss the opportunity?
Whoever asked the question, give some specific examples in the chat because to make sure that I don't cop out on what you're really trying to get at. Because the answer that I would give is get more creative about things that seem like money is required to achieve the opportunity. I'm going to try to come up with some specific examples. And I'll give you, I'll give you an example where I broke one of my own rules. So all of the acquisitions we did in 2019 were all equity. There were no cash acquisitions. So, first there was where'd you get the money to buy other companies? We didn't. We got super creative. We worked with people in really cool ways and we did all equity deals. Another one would be the working with our workplace clients has been a really big one. A lot of the things that we have to deal with is the timing of when we develop things versus when we get paid for things, because you want to offer the things that you know that you can do when you get paid, but you may not be able to do them all until you get paid. So that's kind of been an odd dance to do. But what we have not done is commit extra money to development in advance of getting contracts signed. We wait until we get a contract signed and then commit to the dev. And one might argue that that's an opportunity lost potentially, right? Because otherwise maybe we're selling something that's more appealing to someone if we're kind of above what we can offer. I can tell you at SpaceX, we always, we're selling incredible things and then coming back and making that happen. So it's not that it can't happen. But I would consider being able to do that a luxury of being more cash positive, to be able to take advantage of opportunities in that way. So instead what we did is we went after different clients. We targeted different clients instead. There's one case where I broke one of my rules. I did have to have a contract written and I needed it to be correct. And I did accept an offer of deferred payment from our legal counsel for that contract, because I knew when it got signed that I would be able to pay them. It was small enough that I was willing to pay out of pocket if that didn't happen. So there you go. If you've got any more on that, send it my way. I hope that's not a cop-out answer.
And we'll give her a few minutes if she has sort of a follow-up to that, but we have another pre-asked question here up on the screen.
Do you do your own business taxes? No, I do not. I do not have the expertise to do that. I tried. And I tried and I couldn't quite get there. And it's even happened actually that we've had CPAs that tried and they didn't get it done right either. And now we have to go back and redo them, which is very unfortunate. But it's something that I hear a lot is, well, make sure that you invest in the right decision first because it's expensive to go back and fix it later. It is expensive to go back and fix mistakes later, but later is later. And later you might be in a better position to be able to fix those mistakes. Either you've earned more or you've learned more or you've networked more. If you need to, like the only thing you can, this is what we got at the beginning, the only thing you do wrong is to not do anything and to make no decisions. So do your best to grab your accountants through great referrals. I always call the IP folks to get really great referrals for things like that, and take your best shot. And then if you have to fix something else later, you do. Or if you can get close enough to getting your own taxes done, I'm not going to say that I cannot formally recommend any taxes, blah, 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 blah. But, if you screw something up, the IRS or the Franchise Tax Board will tell you, and then you go back and you fix it later. So, it's things are fixable, but I do get mine done.
Great. And Maggie asks, do you recommend joining incubator or accelerator programs? And is joining the school one recommended?
I do. So we haven't done a big accelerator like YC or Techstars or one of those yet. But what I understand from who have is that they find those to be very worthwhile, even if it's not the education they get, but the contacts they get and the prestige and the validation you get from having been accepted into one. But I've always found that everything we give into our community, we get back tenfold. And being a part of incubators and accelerators that are smaller, maybe local to you, a lot of that is you giving in addition to you receiving. So we did the Cal State Dominguez Hills Innovation Incubator for Social Entrepreneurs. That's where we got all of our first interns from. And so we committed to them as a community partner and went into an actual collaboration to make that happen. And we wouldn't be here today without them and their resource support and their encouragement. We also did the International Business Accelerator out of USC. We did that while we were doing our international expansion at the end of 2019. And similarly, it is so cool. When you're growing up and you're a kid, you've got all these people who are rooting for you all the time, like your parents who just and your teachers who are just unconditionally being like, yes, you got this. And they're giving resources to you and they're encouraging you. And then you become an adult and who does that for you then? Well, an incubator or an accelerator does that for you. And it feels great. And it's awesome to just have someone in your corner rooting for you like that. Build your team, your advisor team, your community up to be like that too. Maggie Shee, I got to give a shout out to her because she is one of those people for us. So.
All right. And we have our next question. Everything's about money. Startups are very concerned about money and cash flow. Did you buy or rent a location?
We're fully remote. So the whole team is designed to be remote. The tools that we use primarily are our Google Drive, Slack, Marco Polo, because I do think that FaceTime with your team is super important. And because we're all in different time zones, because we were spread across 2 countries at one point, we've trimmed down a little bit now. But our staff was across like 8 hours worth of time zones. Marco Polo is great because you can send your messages, get your FaceTime, but then I can send it at night and East Coast will pick it up in the morning. So that's great. We did in early 2020. So we got our first co-working spaces right before the pandemic started. It was February of 2020. I asked all of our staff to go home and stop working out of the office in March of 2020. So we shut down all of those. I think co-working spaces are totally worth it. but only this is a survival versus value thing. Do you have to have a co-working space to survive as a startup? No. Do you have to have an office in like the tech enabled world? Often, no, you don't. So if you have to make survival decisions, those things go away, and get them out as soon as possible, because if you spent $1,000 over 3 months and then you're like, oh, I really should have canceled that before, or I knew this was going to happen, I have to let this go. Well, now you've lost $1,000, and that could have sustained goodness knows what. That would have been a stipend for somebody to keep them paid and on your team. But if you are in a situation where you've got steady revenue and you've got, like, you're in a really good spot, I think the co-working spaces are great, and that's what we'll go back to again if we have the opportunity.
Awesome. And yet more about money here.
When did you start paying yourself after costs of the company were paid? Everything that I've put into the company was made as a capital investment. So some of it was just started. Some of it, I am an investor in my own company. It's not a loan to the company. I don't reimburse myself. Again, for the same reasons that I don't take loans from anyone else or don't do back pay. An investor doesn't want to be giving me money to pay me back. So we don't do that. I also don't take a paycheck. And I haven't since we started. So we started in 2017. It's been 4 years, no paycheck. I recognize the extraordinary privilege, and that word's getting thrown around a lot right now, but like the fact that I can work on a company and not take a paycheck is kind of ridiculous. And as a working parent, I am so lucky to have a spouse who is working, who's able to work right now, who's willing to take his turn doing the work right now, and that we can manage to make that enough. There is no reason why having a spouse with an income, or having an obscene amount of savings, or like living in a tent outside should be requirements for being a successful startup entrepreneur. And I get things a lot of times like, well, if you're not working on your startup full time, you're not committed. You're not a real business owner if you have another job. That's ridiculous. If that's what you have to do to have a company and to make ends meet and support your family and support yourself and have balance, then you do what you need to do. And I would say that makes you extra committed. What those statements are really saying is you're not making enough revenue as a company to pay yourself a paycheck, so I'm not interested. And that's a totally different thing than you're not committed. And so it's a narrative that I'm very, very passionate about, because especially for parents, we're not all college students eating ramen out of a basement. That's not what a startup entrepreneur necessarily looks like anymore. But it does require us allowing us to reshape our vision of what an entrepreneur looks like, to be able to support everyone's different lifestyles as they find a way to make this work. To answer your question though, how much are you going to pay yourself? This is also, it's not about the value, it's about survival. Do you deserve a paycheck? Yes, you do. Are you valuable for a paycheck? Yes, you are. Is there money for a paycheck? Is it going to cost survival if you take one? That's the actual question. Not if you deserve it, it's if you can survive, right? One way or another, you personally or your company, with or without it. That's the real question.
And apparently what you just said resonated with Sean, who said, I'm so glad you said that. So have some supporters out there on this line of thinking. You have another question from the audience. If you have one thing to share for a first-time entrepreneur, what would that one piece of advice be? And there's a little recognition here at the end that I know it's a bit generic.
Maggie, you are the best for asking generic questions at the ends of presentations. Oh, you guys can hear my baby. I don't know if you hear the crying baby. He's mad. Number one thing you have to do is to start. Number two thing you have to do is to not stop. And in the middle of all of that, what does start mean? It means you just got to keep making decisions over and over and over again. Even though you don't know all of the answers. The worst thing you can do is not decide and do nothing, because then the company goes nowhere. So get started, make the decision, make mistakes. You will earn the skills and earn the support to be able to correct those mistakes later and as you go. The number one thing you have to do after you start is to just not quit. as long as doing your startup is what you still want to do, and you've maintained your responsibility to your staff, to your clients, to your investors, you know, it's about your time, and it's about what you want to be doing with that time, because your startup can succeed no matter how much, you know, it's just how long it's going to take. Maggie Lowell, it's a great question. It is, Beth. It is a legit question, Maggie.
So I know we've run about 12 minutes over our usual allotted time, but you said you could hang out for a little bit extra here with us today. If anyone has any additional questions for Erin, just please go ahead, type it in the chat, type it in the Q&A. I'm sharing my screen to remind everyone. So type your question in the chat. You could probably take a couple more, I'm thinking, before your baby gets too angry about your absence. Right, so any last minute questions? And is there another, we had a lot of questions I noticed about money. Money's a big concern. It's a big question for startup founders. But did you have any, I'm trying to think of how to phrase this probably, but did you have any advice? You know, you do recommend some of your workers actually work several jobs. Did you have any advice for how they could properly manage that while still staying committed to your endeavor as well? How do you manage that?
That's a really cool question. I think so much of that is baked into the culture that is forming now. The gig economy is one of them. Working parents is another example of that. We all wear so many different hats now in our life that keeping a couple of jobs going at one time doesn't seem to be a thing like maybe it was at one point in time. Also, because people are able to work remotely and online, you can kind of work at any hour. So what we do as an employer is we make sure that we are maximally flexible. So there's no time that people have to be on. We give everybody remote tools. Everyone has the opportunity to work whatever hours they want. It's get your job done. I don't care how many hours spend on it. Spend 1 hour or 20, as long as it gets done, it doesn't matter. So the more employers also that can get into that sort of a groove enables that type of work environment for everybody. And actually, I think that employers that don't will be left behind for talent.
Awesome. Yeah, I tend to go with that advice too, even for our employees. Get your work done. Doesn't matter when you do it, as long as it gets done and you feel committed to it and you feel motivated. So I think we're winding down here with folks, got a few folks dropping off, so everybody's getting hungry. Any last words of advice before we share resources or anything?
I think we nailed it. My email is on here, so if anybody has any other follow-ups or questions, you can reach out anytime.
Great. And I do want to note that we have a few partnerships through Innovate Pasadena. If folks are looking to connect with angel investment, we do have board members who represent the Pasadena Angels, great local angel investor group here. So I recommend, again, always going local. And so if you're looking for a connect or you're looking to find them, just search Pasadena Angels, pasadenaangels.org, I believe, online. And we also have a new partnership with Alliance for SoCal Innovation, a venture pipeline program that they have just launched. And if you're looking for your Series A, if you're looking to raise your Series A, your Series A ready, reach out and contact Innovate Pasadena. We can help get you connected to apply for that program. It's a fantastic program. And even if you're not quite there yet and you don't make it into this program, they're going to help connect you with resources to get you ready. So email hello@innovatepasadena.org if you're interested. And a few last resources to note. I'm just stepping all over Erin's resources list here. But we also have a partnership with a couple of local universities, with PCC and with Art Center, to connect local businesses with interns and with new graduates. And new graduates don't always mean that they're 22 and they've never been in the workforce. There's a lot of recent grads that have made career switches. So a lot of times, especially with PCC, you're getting some seasoned professionals who have just been adding to their knowledge. So again, reach out to Innovate Pasadena if you're interested in finding out more about those programs. And Erin, did I miss anything? Co-working spaces in Pasadena, there's a lot of them, like Control Collective and Cross Campus.
And Industrious has a new one out there. We've made use of all three of those, and they've all been fantastic sites.
And I think you placed those in the chat as well. And again, feel free to reach out to Innovate Pasadena if anybody has any questions.